So welcome to linear algebra class. As promised, I'm going to solve the first problem from I think 6th assignment, right? Yes. Okay. So I would go ahead first solve that problem. It's actually not a difficult problem at all. So here is the idea. So the problem is related to optimization. Yeah. Ooh, yes. So problem is related to optimization. Okay. So in this problem, so there is the concept, something called as the convex set, or also called as convex hull. Now, what do I mean by convex set or convex hull? So convex is this shape. And now if you have more than one variable or more than two variables or more than 3, 4, 5, 6 variables, what happens is this bowl is called as the hull. So if you think about, let me show you, if you think about X, Y, and Z, so what you have is you have a convex shape here, you have a convex shape here. So you can think about that you have some sort of a bowl that is indicated on X and Y plane. So you have X, you have Y, and if you look from top on XY plane, you are gonna get circles. Now, if you think about, instead of just two variables, X and Y, if you have 3, 4, 5, 6 variables, you are gonna get something like a bowl, but that shape we can't draw in the three-dimensional figure. So that's why it's called as the convex hull. And usually convex optimization is a big topic of research, and there are courses in that area. But what I want to do is I want to incorporate this optimization and basically convex optimization with constraints. So what do we mean by optimization with constraints? So for an example, many a times you want to optimize a function, either minimize or maximize. So let me state the problem something like this. Minimize a function f of x, say, which is given as x1 square plus x2 square. Now, if you think about x1 square by x2 square, just imagine that this is x1 and this is x2 and this is nothing but f of x. So this shape is given as a convex set or a convex hull. And the constraint that we have, is there is certain relationship between x1 and x2. And that relationship I'm gonna talk about as a1, give as a1 x1 plus a2 x2 is equal to some value b. So what that means is, here is the problem. I want to find out the values. This is how the problem will be stated. Find x1 star and x2 star. These are the values for which for which f of x is minimum. So this is the problem that we want to solve. Now, if this problem would have been just find minima, then you can just take the derivative and equate it to 0. So how is this problem different from finding just the minima? So if you have a function, so f of x, and this f of x function is given as x square. If you want to find the minima, what you do is you take the derivative and then equate it to 0. Find the second derivative and check for positive or negative. That tells you whether it's an extreme, whether it's maxima or minima. But this problem is slightly different. We want to find out the values of x1 star and x2 star for which f of x is minimum. But you can't just take the derivative and equate it to 0. Why? Because we are imposing an additional constraint that there is a specific relationship between x1 and x2. So in this case, a1, a2, and b are constants. So the idea is, how do we take this constrained optimization problem and make it into an unconstrained optimization problem? And that is the beauty of Lagrangian multipliers. What does Lagrangian multiplier do? Lagrangian multiplier will take that constraint and incorporate that constraint as part of the function to be minimized. Are you with me so far? So if you think about the Lagrangian multipliers, so what does it do? It takes constrained optimization problem, and by Lagrange multiplier, I'm going to call this lambda, which is Lagrangian multipliers. Convert this into an unconstrained optimization problem. So how does it do it? There is a very simple trick. What it does, it multiplies the constraint by a, 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 a value or a constant lambda, or sorry, a variable. So what it does, basically, you can see the constraint which is over here. That constraint can be written as a1x plus a2x minus b is equal to 0. This is the constraint. I'm going to multiply this constraint by Lagrangian multiplier. That's why it is called as a multiplier. A1x plus a2x minus b, and add that to the function that is to be minimized. So this function that we have over here is going to become x1 square plus x2 square. And this is called as Lagrangian. So this is called as the Lagrangian. How this thing comes? Okay, so let me start with a very basic, and I understand this probably is more conceptual question. What is optimization? Take the derivative, equate it to 0. Do you agree with me? Right. Now, there, when I do that, I'm not considering any constraints. So basically, I'm not saying my value of x should be particular within the range, or there should be some relationship between x1 and x2, or my x1 has to be just positive, or x2 has to be just positive, or x1 can be positive, but x2 has to be negative. all that type of stuff. So these are the constraints. When you optimize, you realize that there are many solutions that are possible. Amongst those many solutions possible, which is the most viable solution that you are looking for? So what we are looking for is we are looking for the solution that is following this constraint, say a1x x1 plus a2x x2.
My question is like I want to understand like what's the meaning of when you write Lagrange equals to x1 square x2 square plus lambda times the constraint.
No. So basically, just to answer, let me answer Sonia's question. So maximization is minus minimization. So if you want to perform the maximization, you would just subtract. You'll do minus f of x. That would be the maximization. So right now we are solving the problem for minimization, x1 square plus x2 square. If you want to do the maximization, you would just say minus x1 square minus x2 square. Okay. So how does, so your question is how does this work?
My question is like how you write this Lagrange function.
So this is the basic cost function or the function to be maximized or minimized. Do you agree with me? This is the constraint. And this is just a variable lambda, which is called as the Lagrangian multiplier. Everyone, you understood this?
What he's trying to say is that how did we end up with that? Like, why are we multiplying lambda with the constraint, and how did that come to be?
Okay.
What's the proof for that?
Okay. Well, what is the proof for that?
Not the exact step. Yeah.
Okay. So the idea is you have a constraint and you have function to minimize. How would you bring that constraint into the function that you want to minimize? So think about it that you are trying to satisfy two conditions at the same time. You want to minimize the function, but in addition to minimizing the function, you want to make sure that the star values, which actually x1 star and x2 star, that actually minimize the function, are having some sort of relationship. Do you agree with me? Now I need to actually let me give you the proof. Just a second. Bear with me for a second. So what I want to do is,
We saw similar kind of thing in Hamiltonian as well. So that's why I'd like to.
oh, Hamiltonian is different. Hamiltonian is slightly, no, constraint can be nonlinear too. So let me explain this concept in just a second. So do you agree with me that this x1 square plus x2 square f of x, this cost function is nothing but a circle? Do you agree with me? And this is x1, this is x2, and this guy is nothing but f of x. Do you agree with me? All right. Now what I want to do is, this is very important. I want to find out the minimum value of the cost function when the cost function is minimum. Now you agree with me, what do I mean by minimization of cost function? Minimization of cost function is nothing but shrinking the circle. Do you agree with me? Okay. So now what I want to do is, there is this equation a1 x1 plus a2 x2 plus b. This equation, do you agree with me, can be written as a line. So I can write this equation as x2 is equal to m x1 plus say b bar. Do you agree with me? This equation, this actually represents an equation of a line. Now what that means is I can draw this line. So this line I'm going to draw. And this is this line. Or in other words, this is the line that is given as a1 x1 plus a2 x2 is equal to b. This is the line, right? Now let me ask you the most logical question. If I want to change that radius of the circle, at the same time, my variables x1 and x2 should be on that line, where would that circle touch the line? It would be tangent. Do you agree with me? So if you start increasing the circle, you will realize that at one point, this is going to hit the tangent. And basically, by adding the Lagrangian multiplier, we are exactly solving that geometric problem that is happening over there. I want to find out, and this is very important, I want to find out x1 and I want to find out x2 such a way that these 2 points, now think about it like this, and I want you to think about this very, very carefully. When x1 and x2 are on the line, and by adding the Lagrangian multiplier, I'm making sure x1, x2 are part of the line and part of the circle. You agree with me? That is the only way I can satisfy the minimization. I can satisfy the function f of x, and I can satisfy the constraint. Do you agree with me? So basically, now I want to find out the values of x1, x2, but I need the x1, x2 need to satisfy f of x, and x1, x2 need to satisfy the constraint that is given over there. You agree with me? So that is what it means. The Lagrangian multiplier. Now, yes, it's tangent, correct. All right. So what happened? Now you know that's the same drill. If you want to minimize, take the derivative, equate it to 0. Do you agree with me? How many variables we have? We had x1, we had x2, and since we added the constraint, we got lambda, right? So take the derivative, equate it to 0. So partial L with respect to partial x1 is equal to 0. So partial L with respect to partial x1 is equal to 0, which means you will have 2x1 plus 0 plus, can you see that this guy is going to become a1 lambda is equal to 0. Partial L, partial x2 is equal to 0, which means, can you see this becomes 2x2 plus a2 lambda is equal to 0. Last but not least, we added that lambda, that is our doing. So we added one more variable. Since we are doing optimization, take the derivative, equate it to 0. Partial L, partial lambda is equal to 0. And why is this required? Because please understand, right now there are 3 variables, right? x1, x2, and lambda. To find 3 variables, we need 3 equations. And once we take these partial derivatives, we got 3 equations. So which is this will be 0, 0 plus a1 x1 plus a2 x2 minus b is equal to 0. Do you agree with me? Now I want you to Look at the last expression very carefully. Can you see that the derivative of the Lagrangian, is nothing but the constraint equation? You agree with me? So that is what was asked in the problem that was given in assignment. So I will solve this problem completely. So how do we solve this problem? And believe it or not, if someone asks you what does a Lagrange multiplier does, the simplest answer is Lagrange multiplier allows us to bring in constraint as part of the function to be minimized. So always visualize that you have that circle, and what you want to do is you want to minimize that circle, but imagine that you have that line. So your constraint now is your variables should lie on the line and should lie on the circle. So clearly you are going to need a function that includes your original function and the constraint. How would you bring that in? By using the Lagrange multiplier. Everybody understood this? Now another approach, what you want to think about it, what does this partial L by partial lambda does? It basically makes sure that your constraint is perpendicular to the cost function. That is what it does. So first, so can you see that this is perpendicular, right? See that again? I didn't understand it. Okay. So what I'm trying to say here is what this total Lagrangian, initially we just had the function to be minimized, but now we want to satisfy two conditions. We want the function to be minimized and we want the constraint to be satisfied. So before doing minimization, the basic condition is whatever x1, x2 I get, they should satisfy the function x1 square plus x2 square, and they should satisfy the equation a1 x1 plus a2 x2 is equal to b. So how would I combine these together? So basically this is a constrained optimization problem. How do I make it into an unconstrained optimization problem? So I brought those constraints as part of the formulation, and then when I take the derivative, then I actually got the answer. Believe it or not, if you think about the first expression, partial L by partial x, you are getting 2x1 as the condition, and you are getting a1 lambda, that is because of the constraint. If you look at partial L by partial x2, you're getting 2x2, that is because of your function, and you are getting the relationship in constraint a2 lambda is equal to 0. And at the end, what you are doing is you are looking at the constraint. So that's all they do. If someone asks what is Lagrange multiplier, Lagrange multiplier is nothing but allows yes, that equals to constraint, that is correct. So that allows you, so now you are going to satisfy three equations.
So,
Yeah.
like, to consider the same thing in the geometrical point of view, you could say that lambda is the one which decides the radius of the circle.
Lambda is the one that decides the radius of the circle. The radius of the, so bear with me for a second. Let me solve this. And so radius of circle is, do you agree with me, is going to be x1 star square plus x2 star square. Okay, let's see if it is equal to lambda. So x1, x2 is minus a2 lambda by 2, and then you can substitute these values, a1 minus a1 by 2 lambda plus A2 minus A2 by 2 lambda minus B is equal to 0. So from here, you can find out the value of lambda. That value of lambda is minus 2B divided by A1 square plus A2 square. And with that, you can find out value of x1. So this x1 is x1 star because at that, so this is, so equation 1. So this becomes A1 B divided by A1 square plus A2 square, and then you get x2 star is equal to A2B divided by A1 square plus A2 square. And why these are called stars? Because these are the points that are on the intersection of the circle. Yes. So there is a different way of solving this problem. If you have multiple constraint lines, so I will answer that question. So you may get an equation, or you may get a system that can satisfy, or you may get a system that may not satisfy. So basically what you will do is you will have lambda ones and lambda twos, and basically, so to answer this question, say what you have is you have, let me answer this question just a second. Let me solve this problem and let me answer your question just a second. So you got x1 star and x2 star. Please note x1 star and x2 star are the points which are shared by the circle and the line. And what is the function x at f x1 star and x2 star is, you will substitute the value x1 star square plus x2 star square, and this will become a1 square b square divided by a1 square plus a2 square square, plus you will have a2 square b square divided by a1 square plus a2 square square, and then once you combine, you are gonna get 2b, what you get, basically you get b square divided by a1 square plus 2 square. So what I want to tell you here is this radius is b square divided by a1 square plus a2 square. Now I want you to look at the value of lambda. So the radius of the circle is b square divided by a1 square plus a2 square, but the equation for lambda is minus 2b divided by a1 square plus a2 square. Everyone, so what that means, if you want to find out the relationship is d by db b square a1 square plus a2 square is equal to minus lambda. That is the relationship. So radius of the circle, to answer your question, radius of the circle is not equal to the the value of lambda. But if you take the derivative of the radius of the circle with respect to the constant parameter b, that gives you negative lambda. Okay. Now, if you have multiple constraints, now based on what I showed you, tell me, now I give you two constraints. I give you one constraint on this line. I give you another constraint on another line. Geometrically, what should happen? Geometrically, solve both lines. Now here's the problem. You solve the both lines, you get a point. What is the guarantee that point will lie on the circle? If you can just change the circle radius to the head, and then you can
It
get
will be lambda 1 and lambda 2, lambda first will
Okay. So now here is the basic idea. As many constraints, those many lambdas, right? Add, take the derivative and equate it to 0. But here is the basic problem. You will realize now here are 3 equations and 3 unknowns. But when you are trying to visualize that you have 2 constraint lines, as rightly said, that if you find the intersection of those 2 lines, there is no other way that circle, there is no other point that circle can expand to. So that is where the minima would be. Now the next question is, does f of x have to be circle? The answer to that question is no, not at all. But you need to have a convex function, and convex function means that you have some type of a square term, some type of a fourth term. Otherwise, you're not going to have a convex bowl. You're not going to get a nice minimum.
That nice mean, is it going to work for different functions or just for squares?
So, to be honest with you, when you study about deep learning, you are not, never deep learning optimization problems are never nice optimization problems. But if you want to solve the problems using the way we have solved with Lagrangian multiplier and all that stuff, the problems we deal with for hand calculations are usually convex. We don't solve concave problems. So we always solve convex problems.
And they like is the computer able to solve?
So yeah, then if there are, Vishnu, see, this is the question that I was referring to. If there are 2 parallel lines, then what would you do? So basically in that case, you can only satisfy. Hey, you have 3 things. You have time, you have money, and you have the result. So basically you can pick only 2. You can actually choose for time and result. Then you have to spend a lot of money. You don't have any control over money. If you want time and if you want money, then probably you don't have any control over the outcome. So if you want to constrain time, if you want to constrain money, then you can't control what the outcome is going to be. So hey, you have to just select 2. Okay, now I solved this problem because assignment number 6, problem number 1. Did anyone, do you want me to solve this problem or everyone got it? How about students online? Oh, diagram is super simple.
So for the diagram, do we need to randomly choose some point?
Oh, yeah. So easiest way to do this diagram is use a software. Now you will ask which software exactly. And the software that I would use is called Desmos. If you look at Google it, it's an online calculator. So if you want to plot, I would use Desmos. MATLAB what? I don't know. I will use Desmos. So I don't know if you have not used Desmos. It's an online calculator that is fantastic plotter. Just put those equations in there, and then you can actually draw the circle and draw the constraint equation, and then actually change the values, and you will find out So what you should see is you would get something like this, and then you're gonna get something like this. And this is the point. Okay. Any questions from online students? Everyone good with assignment number 6? Oh yeah, I think somebody wants to double check. Okay, since you want to double check, I will go ahead and work this problem out. So f of x is 1/2 x1 square plus 2 x2 square. And your constraint equation is x1 plus 3x2 is equal to b. So Lagrangian is equal to 1/2 x1 square plus 2 x2 square plus lambda x1 plus 3x2 minus b. Partial L by partial x1 is equal to x1 plus 0 plus lambda is equal to 0. Partial L partial x2 is equal to 4 x2 plus 3 lambda is equal to 0. Partial L by partial lambda is equal to x1 plus 3 x2 minus b is equal to 0. Now we need to substitute. As you know, x1 is equal to minus lambda, x2 is equal to minus 3 lambda by 4. Substitute that in the expression, minus lambda plus 3 lambda by 4 minus b is equal to 0. So you have minus lambda minus 9 lambda by 4 is equal to b. Okay, so you have minus 13 by 4 lambda is equal to b. So you get lambda, you get lambda is equal to minus 4 by 13 b. Once you have lambda, you can find out value of x1. x1 is equal to minus lambda, which is plus 4 by 13b. x2 is equal to minus 3 by 13b. And then you will get the value of the cost function. x1 star, x2 star. What? x2 minus x2 is by 4, right? Also become plus, right? Okay, plus 3. So this is 4 by 13 b. So you want to square this divided by 2 plus 2 times 3 by 13 b square. And then this is what is asked, right? Let me see. 3 equations, solve these equations, find the Lagrangian multiplier, then draw the diagram, and then the derivative is very simple. We just showed over here that the derivative of the Lagrangian. Okay, you want to do the minimize cost is the partial f by partial b. Okay. So the last part is once you find out f, x1 star, x2 star is going to be 4 by 13 square 1/2 times b square plus 2 multiplied by 3 by 13 square b square, and you want to do partial f by partial b. Partial f by partial b is going to be 2 times 4 by 13 square 1/2 b, so half goes, plus you have 2 times 3 by 13 square b, and as you can see, this is nothing but minus lambda. So, oh, you're not getting minus lambda? Probably I made a mistake somewhere, but basically once you take the, let me see, where did I make a mistake? You see, is your x1 value matching with my x1 value? X2 value?
Yes.
The minimize cost function, which is 4 by 3.
No, the lambda value is not matching.
Huh? Lambda what?
Lambda value is not matching.
Oh, lambda value is not matching. What is the value of lambda? What lambda do you get?
And then you divide by -2 by
Minus 9 by 4. What lambda are you? Okay, did I make a mistake somewhere here? Huh?
-4b by 13.
13 सही है.
Professor, we are getting minus.
You should use
4b by
S.
13.
Lambda we got -4.
Okay, I don't know why that. So
that matches.
this should match.
It matches.
He got the same value of lambda, but he got the same answer. Okay, I don't know if I made a mistake somewhere or.
So that this is right. This is right.
Professor, we are getting the same.
Okay, good. So you are getting the same. So we are agreeing, or we are not agreeing. So this condition is not matching.
Condition matches.
I don't know. So this is what my solution is. If you think there is any mistake, just let me know. I just worked this problem out. Next part is I want to continue and finish the discussion that we started in last class on the reinforcement learning. So everyone remembers what we are doing in reinforcement learning. So reinforcement learning, we have to set up the environment, then we have to set up the reward, then we have to actually come up with some sort of policy, and then we have to do the training, and then we want to deploy. So if you recollect, we talked about different types of rewards. So there is something called as the sparse rewards. There is something called as the reward shaping. That means the distributed rewards. then what you can do is basically you can change the structure of the reward based on the domain specific knowledge. Basically, whatever additional information that you have regarding the problem, you can use that to change that reward function. And then we talked about the concept where you have exploration, you can also have exploitation. And again, pure exploration or pure exploitation is not good. So what you want to do is you want to balance. You want to balance both these. So you want to actually balance exploitation and exploration. And then I think we also discussed there is an optimal balance wherein you actually explore and exploit so that you reach the most conclusive solution in the least possible time. And then there is an additional concept which is called as the value. So if you think about the reinforcement learning emphasizes on the immediate reward. But once you add the concept of value, then it, in addition to the immediate reward, it tells you the cumulative reward at the end of the process. So value is, think about the cumulative reward that you expect at the end of the process. And again, you want to be conservative. So you can't just be too short-sighted. You cannot be just too long-sighted. So basically what you have is something called as the discount factor. So as the reward goes further out in the future, you kind of discount it. You kind of make it smaller. And then we land up with something called as a policy function. So what is the policy? Everything in reinforcement learning is nothing but an algorithm. It's just nothing but a mathematical expression. It could be a logical expression, mathematical expression, conditional expression, but at the end, it's a mathematical function. So what we do is that policy is a function. What it does, it interacts with the reinforcement learning algorithm. And what happens in reinforcement learning algorithm, the entire agent comprises of function and the learning algorithm, and this agent is dealing with the environment. And in the environment, the agent is performing some actions, and due to those actions, you are getting some sort of outcome, and that outcome is nothing but some sort of a encoded reward, some sort of a number, positive big, positive small, negative big, negative small. And also at the same time, you are feeding the observations to agent. And what happens is this reinforcement learning algorithm takes the input based on the reward and observation. Please understand, reinforcement learning algorithm does not perform any action. Reinforcement learning algorithm only interacts with reward and observation and provides the feedback to the function. And once you get feedback to the function, what happens is that this agent, which is comprising of function and algorithm, performs some sort of action. And how do you represent a policy? Policy is nothing but some sort of function, a mathematical algorithm or an equation. There are basically two types of structures in the policy. You can have a direct policy or you can have an indirect policy. And again, we can actually think about representing a policy. And that's why that is where this something called as the Q table something comes in the picture. So think about it is like a lookup table wherein you have all possible states, all possible actions, and for a particular selection of action and basically the state, you have certain amount of value. And please note, this is not a static table. This table gets updated after every action. So basically this is called as something called as the Q table. In this particular example, there are 3 states and there are 3 actions. So basically you have 9 values. And after you take certain value, if you take certain action, this Q table gets updated. And you can actually, what you do is, for example, in this case, you have an inverted pendulum problem. And I would strongly encourage you, I will show you where this inverted pendulum problem is inside the MATLAB. I would strongly encourage you to run this code and see reinforcement learning in action. And it actually is pretty cool, the way it solves the inverted pendulum problem. So basically, you kind of define some sort of a value. In this particular case, that value is nothing but theta dot velocity square plus theta square, which is the angle square, plus torque. Or you can have a value which is velocity multiplied by sine of theta plus torque. It could be, you have to define some sort of logical structure that based on the states like angle and angular rate, and based on certain torque, it can actually specify certain value that you can actually compute. Now, this becomes super complex. What should be the structure? And again, since there are a lot of variables, the easiest way to represent a function that can handle continuous states and action, that is what we do with the neural network. So the idea is, now basically this is where the DQN and all those techniques in reinforcement learning comes in the picture, wherein you want to define, or you want to discuss, or you want to use this function, but you don't know the exact structure of the function. So what is the best way to describe this? The best way to describe this is using a universal function approximator, and that is nothing but the neural network. So in reinforcement learning class, are you doing using DQN, DQ network and all?
Yeah, there's a concept called DQN.
Yeah, so that's good. So now we talked about the neural network. So can someone tell me in one sentence, how would you explain a neural network? Black box? Universal function approximator. Now, black box. So here is something that is very important that I want to tell you. So when the neural network research started, those were viewed as black boxes because they had lots of knobs to tune. And at the end, after tuning those knobs, you got the result, but you can't interpret why you are getting the results. Nowadays, there is this emerging field of interpretable neural networks, wherein what you do is basically you design a neural network that somehow mimics the dynamics or some sort of physical concept or physical phenomenon. So you can look at the structure of the neural network and actually say or interpret that neural network. So that is a huge area of research, interpretable neural network. Here is the basic concept behind neural network. Neural network is piecewise linear function operated by a nonlinear function. So what you have is, so what is, and I just want to tell you this because this is something what we already did, okay? But I want everyone to get to this. The basic neuron structure is you have a weight, W, that's a number. You have A, which is the input from the previous layer. And what you have is a bias weight. So can you see W naught is the weight, A is the previous input, and B is the bias. W times A plus B is a linear equation. So this linear equation you want to use to approximate nonlinear functions. And those nonlinear functions would be very complex. So what you do is you operate with an activation function. What is an activation function? Activation function takes this linear function and converts that into a nonlinear function. So activation function could be a sigmoid function or a ReLU function. Why do we need this activation function? Because the functions that we are trying to approximate, they are basically nonlinear And but if we want to use piecewise linear functions, if we want to combine those together, we need to add some sort of nonlinearity. And I would strongly encourage you, to read this problem. This is the basic problem with a neural network. The question is, can neural network solve any universal function approximation problem? And the most general answer is yes, but they may not be able to do it in the finite time and the resources that we have. So there is a book by Ian Goodfellow, a data learning book, that actually gives you this conceptual discussion on the idea is, can I use a neural network to approximate this complicated shape? And to answer to that question is yes. So in this discussion, you can see that he finally uses the ReLU function, neuron activations, weighted outputs, and the concept here is, with this neural network, he get a very good reconstructions of the curve. And this is just with 6 neurons. So if you were to increase number of neurons, then you would be able to get this complicated. Yes, these slides, I'm gonna post it online and on Canvas. So if you actually click on this link, and this code is given in Python, so I would strongly encourage that you guys can just run this code on the side. And the idea is he's just using 6 nodes, and they are actually approximating this shape fairly accurately. And if you think about the neural networks, they could have hundreds of nodes. So finally, this is the premise of the neural network. Yes, I will go ahead and upload these slides. Now, we talked about 2 different nonlinear activation functions. You have ReLU, you have sigmoid, and here is the basic idea. What you have is, we want to come up with a policy. Policy is a complex mathematical function. We don't want to spend time finding out that complex mathematical function. So we are going to approximate that with the neural network. There are different types of neural networks. And in next few lessons, even though I'm not an expert in neural networks, what I would do is, I will try to take some case studies. For example, some case studies in residual neural network, some case studies in recurrent neural network, and I will show you, walk you through some examples using MATLAB, how those can be used. So there is fully connected network, residual neural network, recurrent neural network, there is convolution neural network. So you can choose the structure of the neural network. And what I want to tell you is, if you have not explored a reinforcement learning toolbox inside MATLAB, I would strongly encourage you to explore the reinforcement learning toolbox. It's like drag and drop type of structure. You can drag and drop boxes. And I know you can use Python, but in Python, you have to actually import libraries and you have to do some sort of coding. But with MATLAB, it's basically, once you create the structure, you can actually train or reinforcement neural network. So the last part which I want to talk about briefly is training and deployment. How do you perform the training? So this is a very famous architecture, which is called as the actor and critic. So basically, think about, and so you have something called as the value based, and you have something called as the policy based structure. And this actor critic architecture helps you design this reinforcement learning very nicely. So there are advantages to policy based learning. There are disadvantages to policy based learning. there are advantages to value-based learning. There are disadvantages to value-based learning. So to minimize basically the disadvantages and maximize the advantages, what you do is you design something called as the actor critique structure. So basically, what is an actor and what is a critic? Both of those are neural networks. And the idea is the actor is performing action and the critic is judging that action. And once you go through these slides, there is a very simple game. I don't know if you played this game. This game is like very old Atari game, wherein you have this paddle. That paddle moves left and right, and your purpose is to basically hit all the blocks. Once you hit the block with the ball, the top blocks disappears, and what you want to do is you want to create some sort of a hole in that wall. And you can see, you can perform some sort of exploration, you can perform some sort of exploitation, and finally you can come up with a policy that would allow you to break that wall. And there are additional small nuances to it. Here, there are policy gradient method based on the rate of change. You can decide how you want to do it. And basically, there are again with policy disadvantages of policy gradient method. And then there is something called as the value function based learning, and wherein you have actor, you have the critique. And again, please note, these two are sort of neural networks. And so here is a very great classic example inside the MATLAB. And I don't know, has anyone tried this example before? Nothing in MATLAB. So this is called as the grid world problem. And if you have not done this before, this entire problem is explained in MATLAB. So for example, what we want to do is we want to create a reinforcement learning agent. So the idea is this red ball, we want it to go all the way to 5th row, 5th column. There are 4 actions: top, down, left, right, or north, south, east, and west. And then these are the configurations. So agent has to begin the 2nd row, 1st column, and then it has to reach the reward. But basically, you are going to allow one jump for that ball from the square that is shown in the figure. So only one jump is allowed. Otherwise, that black region is completely blocked. So you have the obstacle, and what you want to do is you want to design the most optimal policy after using reinforcement learning so that the ball can go on to the desired location. So if you get a chance, please load this grid world environment. Then you can actually run through this code. And then there is this Q learning where you can actually define this Q learning. And then you can actually decide the structure. And then you can see after few iterations, the reinforcement learning would converge. And at the end, you would notice that the ball indeed is able to know in what direction to go, when to jump, and how to get to the final destination. So this is basically, and then again, you can do it with SARSA agent. So please take a look at these 2 examples in MATLAB. And then that will give you some sort of basic understanding on how the reinforcement learning works. There is one more example that I want to tell you is, this is something important. So how does this actual math is solved? So basically that math is solved using something called as the Bellman equation. Bellman equation is the same equation that we use in optimization to solve dynamic programming problems. So if you look at this Bellman equation, if you look at that MATLAB code, that MATLAB code is actually solving this Bellman equation. So in these slides, one thing that I want to point out is if you work through the math, here it is actually shown how in each episode, for each step, for each state transition, how is Q computed for particular state and particular action. And based on that, how you will update the Q matrix, and then how would you go to the second episode. So I would strongly recommend to read through this. I don't have time to go through this line by line, but I just want to tell you that once you work out that example in these slides, it actually goes through step-by-step explanation of how each iteration is carried out. So basically it talks about different states, it talks about different actions, and then it's how to solve this Q based on the previous Q with plus alpha value. And then actually in the next part, you can see first 4 iterations are calculated and the Bellman equation is solved on the right hand side. So I found this very instructive. So if you work this out, you will realize that how that problem, the reinforcement learning problem, is actually solved. Then I talked about the critique as neural network, so action of the actor critique network. And there is another example which I want you to take a look at. This talks about the actor critique. Then basically you have, again with the actor critique, you have the learning cycle. And I would actually encourage you to take a look at this example. And again, there is this black box, larger problem, learning policy, formal verification, and all these they talk about. But what I would strongly encourage you to do is please look at this reinforcement learning toolbox and work out that robot walking problem. So when you get a chance, if you want to get some sort of familiarity with what reinforcement learning is, how it can be used, there is a very nice webinar on how to use reinforcement learning to solve the robot walking problem. And I would encourage you strongly to go to so look at this example. And this actually shows you the robot model. It actually shows you what is the policy, the reward structure. Then you have to create the environment, you have to set up the agent, and then you have to set up the training options. And then finally, you will see that after certain iterations, you get the training done, and then you can actually see that robot walking. So I would strongly encourage you to look at this example. Yeah.
That Bellman equation is similar to the Bellman principle of
Optimality, yes.
optimality.
Yes. So basically, the Bellman equation, that what is. So reinforcement learning is very closely related to optimization. So if you think about it, this is the Bellman equation that is used to solve dynamic programming problems. So this is the Bellman equation. And I would strongly encourage you to go through these slides. And then again, there is one more example inside MATLAB where what they did, they solved the inverted pendulum problem using reinforcement learning. Please solve those problems. That way you will have a decent understanding of the reinforcement learning. And again, I know that you have an on-ramp on the reinforcement learning too, right? Okay. So once you do that, you should be pretty good in at least solving the reinforcement learning problem. I would be honest with you, if you go to industry, you will not be designing reinforcement learning algorithms. Most likely, you would be utilizing available software and tools like Python or MATLAB to solve reinforcement learning problems. So I think it's, as a roboticist, you should be familiar with machine learning and reinforcement learning and the concepts in data science. So with that, I'm going to stop here. And if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.